the question I always ask is how much of your time is billable and how much of your time is the stuff you do to run the business? A lot of time. So the implication here is if you're only getting paid for 30 or 40% of the time you work, you better charge at a high enough rate to cover the time that nobody is paying you for.
Hello, hello, hello. It's Holly Rustic here with Grant Writing and Funding, and I'm super happy to have all of you grant writers write better grants, for all you nonprofits to get more funding, and to all of you thinking about starting or growing your grant writing business to have the resources to do that. And to help me do that this week, we have Mr. Andy Robinson, who is a consultant, author, and trainer, and he is on today. He's, we've actually been on talk before, so we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but this is the first time you're on the Grant Writing and Funding podcast, so welcome.
Thank you for having me, Holly. Excuse me, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Super excited for you to be here. And just like as a little teaser, I pointed out that, yes, Andy and I know each other. You were a part of the Nonprofit Consulting Conference in 2022. You gave an amazing session, one of the top rated sessions that we had in 2022. And people loved it. It was all about like how to become a nonprofit consultant. And it was, just like the basics of it. So I said, hey, can you come on the podcast, because people love that session. They're still talking about it today. And I really want, I just love, and I really want to be able to give some of the goods that you were talking about as well, and kind of dive into it a little sideways and a little different for those of you who are thinking about either becoming or growing your nonprofit consultancy. So thank you for your.
You're welcome. So it's a quiz question. What do you remember from the session I did last year?
Ooh, I like it. I liked how you talked about, you were talking about some of your frameworks of your books. I remember we were giving that away. So that was awesome when you're talking about that. But you also talked about the simplicity, like you kept it very simple. So it wasn't necessarily what you said, it was how you said it. And I think just being able to say, this is a way that you can open a consultancy, right? This is a way that you can start. It doesn't, I remember you were saying something like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple like this, right? So yes. I love that approach. Yeah.
Well, if I don't have this on my website, but if I were going to be branded, I would call myself the No BS consultant. Because, excuse me, because that's how I go. It doesn't have to be complicated.
No, it doesn't. So I'm glad you're like, you hit that spot on.
Good. I'm pleased. All right.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. And I love that. So we also have the Nonprofit Consulting Conference coming up in 2023 on August 23rd and 24th. So super excited about that again. But we're going to be looking at what your experience has been. And you've been working with nonprofits for almost 30 years. You've been doing a lot of work. You have books out there. Some of the books, Train Your Board and Everyone Else to Raise Money. I love that. What every board member needs to do, to know, do, and avoid. So I love that as well, that you've really tapped into looking at also board development, board training, right? And because that's really where a lot of this shifts, right? Every decision in a nonprofit comes from that board. So, and that I would say, has that been your main kind of consultancy services, have been on board training and nonprofit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I am sort of the Swiss Army knife of nonprofit consultants. I have done fundraising, I have done planning, I work with a lot of boards, I've done marketing, I have helped with mergers. Lately, I'm doing train the trainer and train the consultant and train the facilitator. So I'm very much a generalist. And I think part of the conversation we'll have today, I hope, is, you have the choice. You can be a specialist, like you do grants. That's your thing. And it's a viable business. You can work as a specialist. I know a number of people who do nothing but capital campaigns, and they make a good living doing that. And that's one strategy. But an alternate choice is to do a variety of things. And one of the advantages of that is once you know a client and they know you and you like them and they like you, there's a lot of different ways that they can hire you for a lot of different things. And so it expands the amount of work you can do with different types of clients. And so if you choose to be a specialist, that's great. I respect that. It's an option. But one of my missions in the world is to try and create more generalists who can enter an organization and then look at the different needs and figure out which tools they can use with that particular client.
I love that. And that's such a great note. That's kind of like where I started was, even though I did grant writing, I really opened it up to be more of a generalist. So I started doing nonprofit strategic planning, board development, board training, fundraising. Like they came to me and said they want to, this made sense for that. I was like, I'm going to learn how to do that. You know how to do it, like I'm gonna figure that out. And and then I would do it. And it was like, do I want to keep doing it? And what that gave me the option to think about was, did I like doing that? Was it efficient for me? Do I want to keep doing that? Is that something I should actually add to my services I advertise? Right. So it was good for me to really, because I like trying new things, and that's not for everyone, like you're saying, but it gave me the opportunity to have options. Right. So that's a pretty cool thing. So I love that you're coming at it from this generalist perspective. And is that what really kind of got you into nonprofit consultancy, was just kind of how I solve problems? Or
shall I tell you the origin story?
Yes, tell me your origin story. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got bit by a spider and I became Spider-Man. I had 15 years working at nonprofits as a staff jobs. So 5 different organizations, 15 years, primarily fundraising, but not exclusively fundraising. And after 13 years, 14 years, I thought, I know enough about this that I could probably train and support others and have my own business. So this is the interesting part of the story. I went to my boss one day and I said, I'm giving you 2 years notice. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I aspire to have my own consulting business, but I'm going to do it gradually. And the way I propose to do it is, year 1, I'm going to work here 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week, because I can do my job in 4 days a week, I think. And the other 3 days, I'm going to start building my business. And in year 2, we are going to hire the person who's going to replace me, and I'm going to go to halftime, and we're going to put this person on, and I'll have a whole year to train our next development director. And then when I jump in 2 years, you will have a fully trained up development director, and I'll have 2 years of building my business to the point where it's probably going to be strong enough to support me. And he said, to his credit, good for you, go for it. So I think some of us think, like, if I'm going to start a business, you turn a switch and one day you're working for somebody else and the next day you're working for yourself. And that's not usually how it works. You got to build the thing gradually. So, we talk about succession planning, which is another thing I do consulting on. I created my own succession plan. I didn't have the language for it. This was 29, 30 years ago. But that's basically what I did. I said, I'm going to build this business, and here is the on-ramp for how I'm going to get it to the place where it can support me. And at the same time, I left my employer in good shape because they had a person to replace me who was trained and had a whole year of experience. So who's ever listening, watching, you don't have to do it that way. That's not a requirement. But I think the message here is it's okay to build it gradually while you keep your day job.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it worked for you, Holly, but what often happens is when you go out on your own, your first client or your first clients are organizations that you used to work for.
Yep, that's
right?
exactly right.
And they want to keep you around, so you work out a deal as a contractor to work there a day a week or whatever. And what I'll say to folks who are new is, if you can find an anchor client who can cover 40 or 50% of what you need in terms of income, you can piece the other 50 to 60% together from other jobs.
Yeah.
And so, this sort of gets us into a conversation about what your business model is, because there are people, I don't know many of them, but there are people who have 3 or 4 clients and they're thoroughly embedded in those organizations, and it's relationships that last over years, and they're on retainers, and that's their whole situation. I have never had that. And I'm not sure I want it. I mean, when I was going full bore, in an average year, I might work with 50 different organizations.
Wow.
And it was a lot of little jobs. It was, I'm going to do a board training, and it's going to be a day, and they're going to pay me $1,500 or $2,000 or whatever. And that's the whole gig.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to another community and I'm going to do a public training and a couple of private events. And I'm going to work with a client on a strategic plan. And I'm on the road for the week and I'm working with 4 different organizations. And then I go home. So again, you have to find your own business model. You can do it by the project. I'm looking at slides here. You can do it by the hour. You can do it as contract staff. And there are legal limits to that. So you want to make sure you're legally kosher and doing that correctly. As noted, some people are on retainer where they just get paid a certain amount every month, regardless of how much the work they're doing. You know, and then everyone's fantasy is passive income, which is you set up some products that allegedly sell themselves. And I'm not convinced that's
there's always marketing involved.
Well, you know, the word passive is a lie, right? You can have to continue promoting those things. And you have to continue refreshing those things. So it's real work. It's not sit around and get rich. It's actual work, but there are some passive income streams that have worked well for some people I know. So, you know, I think smart consultants are looking at what's my business model and what are the pieces that are going to work for me based on my skills, based on my lifestyle, based on how much money I need to earn, based on how much time I want to work, based on whether I'm willing to travel or I want to stay home. And, you know, I mean, you live in a place that's a little hard to get to. So I don't know how much time you're spending on the mainland US. You better, if you're going to come here, you better have a lot of work lined up.
No, and you know, that's a good point because my model is going to be very different from somebody else's who may be in a geographic area where there's a lot more access. And here it was for me, I was saying, okay, I can do X number of grant writing services and that can keep me busy. But if I want to create more freedom and ability to have, you know, maybe broaden the amount of clients, for me, products was a way to go, that quote unquote passive income, or developing different things like this podcast that can reach out and connect me with the world, right? Where I don't have to travel. So it's a very different way. And I love that you're saying that, there's no right or wrong way. It's really, you have to identify with who you are, what you want to do, what your goals are for your life, right? And for your finances and your time and figure it out from there, because there's a lot of different models that you can go, you know, ways you can go. But before we go back into that, I just want to
you should ask some questions.
I want to ask some questions.
Go ask some questions.
I love the what you had said about, you gave, because when you said about in a minute you're gonna say 2-week notice, but 2-year notice. I gave a 2-year notice.
Right.
That's like, wow. So I had to like repeat that. But to also say that that is so cool that you developed that. And a lot of people are starting to give more notice and to work with the organizations they're in. But I love that you first went to a 4-day work week. So just to like say that, because the 4-day work week, I know Sean Kosofsky, I don't know if you know him, the nonprofit fixer. He ran a national nonprofit, and they just converted their nonprofit to a 4-day work week. And he's written an entire blog about that. Amazing. And it's becoming, that 4-day work week back then might not have been as popular, but it's definitely creating more mainstream these days to say, I love that angle. And that's totally applicable and relevant to today, to think about if you're in a nonprofit and you're thinking of transitioning out, you don't have to give just a typical 2 weeks or 30-day notice. You could give even a 6-month notice and first start in 4 days, right? Because do they really need you for 4 days? Probably not. You know, I mean, for 5 days, you could rework some things. You're probably working more than that. Like, you know what I mean? Even there, like you want to start putting boundaries, right? So,
well, I mean, there's a couple of points to this. Number one is you have some flexibility in how you initiate your new business. Use that flexibility. Right. But the other point is, how many hours do you want to work a week? And this is a whole separate conversation and a separate podcast about self-care and not abusing yourself. But I will say, I was doing my day job 4 days a week, and the other 3 days I was trying to build a consulting practice. So, I mean, I was working 6+ days per week during that time period. I mean, not hour to hour to hour, but I was trying to keep a job going while I was also building a business. This is not unusual.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to commit to building your own business, you have to commit time probably above and beyond. Because, I mean, this gets us into the conversation about billable hours. Should we go there?
Yeah, let's go there. Yeah, because
Okay.
that's important.
Yes. So, I mean, how much of your time is billable and how much of your time is the stuff you do to run the business?
Yeah.
And what most of them tell me, and I think they're being honest, is 30 to 40% of their time is billable, which means 60 to 70% isn't. And what is that 60 to 70%? It's bidding jobs that you get or you don't get. It is professional development. It is paying the bills. It is talking to the accountant to make sure your taxes are correct. In some cases, it might be travel, depending if you're charging for travel or not. It's, you know, for me, it's going to the mailbox and picking up, you know, the bills and paying them. It's the time you spend online, you know, chasing stuff down. It's you, you know, going on LinkedIn and seeing what other people are doing and posting for yourself, right? It's a lot of time. So the implication here is if you're only getting paid for 30 or 40% of the time you work, you better charge at a high enough rate to cover the time that nobody is paying you for.
Right.
And, you know, again, the fantasy is, okay, I'm going to charge $100 an hour and I'm going to work 40 hours a week and I'm going to make $4,000 a week. And, you know, it doesn't work that way.
No.
That ain't real.
Yeah, it doesn't. And you can't think of that going from salary to starting your own business.
So the other thing about being self-employed, and Holly, you know this, not everybody does, is you're paying for everything and you're paying taxes twice. Because you're paying self-employment tax, which is both the employer and the employee payroll to Social Security, Medicare, and so forth, right? So you got to pay those quarterly taxes. You have to put that money aside. I got an accountant. That was the first thing I did when I started my business, and I've had an accountant, 2 of them now, 3 of them now for whatever 30 years. And it's worth every penny. Because they keep me clean on that stuff.
I'm like,
my
keep
goodness,
me honest,
such a good thing.
Like,
yeah, I don't know this, so hire someone who knows it, right? You know, and that's another thing. I'm at the point in my business where I can outsource the stuff I don't want to do and pay other people to do it. So, for example, I have a MailChimp account. I've grown my email list, so it's about 11,000 contacts all over the world. But it was just great. I mean, it took years of building it, and I continue to add names, and then they drift away. But I don't want to learn how to manage MailChimp, so I pay somebody to do that. I've got 2 different websites. I don't want to learn how to do HTML. I pay somebody to do that. And, you know, I mean, there's other folks who farm out all their administrative work. I don't have enough of it that it's a burden, but for some people it is. But the point is, you don't have to master every piece of it. You need to do the part you do well. And when income starts coming in, one way to invest that income is hiring people, so you're not doing work you don't want to do, and other people are doing work they're better qualified than you to do. So,
and that accounts for that unbillable hours as well.
Part of it is money that's passing out to other people. I think that's right. That is right. Now, here's I don't know where you are in your business. Every couple of years, I have the conversation with myself of, do I want to hire an employee? Right. So this is the growth question. How do you want to scale your business?
Right.
And I have always come to the same answer, which is I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's salary. So I have been a one-person business this whole time. And again, I have contractors that I pay for certain tasks. And that's worked well for me. There are other people who are more ambitious or have a different kind of vision for their business where they do bring on employees. And I'm totally respectful of that. But it's, again, one of those choices you have to make as you're building the business is, what's the right scale for me? How big do I want this to be? Are you a one-person shop?
I am. I'm like you. I hire consultants and I hire, you know, so I'm scaling up to hiring an OBM, and I have the VA, so doing more admin stuff as well. So in that way I'm scaling, but it's not necessarily like where I want them to be full-time employees and I want to manage all of that. I still like working on deliverables and scope of work with the people that I work with. It feels better to me. You know, even we have long-term contracts, but I'm okay with that. and it feels more doable for me. And it feels like I can still get a lot of what I need to scale without taking on some like long-term commitments with people. So that's where I am.
Again, I mean, I was development director, chief fundraiser for several organizations before I started working for myself. And my keep me up at night moment was, if that grant doesn't come in, then it's possible my friends don't get paid.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
it's a lot
I'm
of
the
stress.
chief rainmaker here, and if I ain't making rain, other people get laid off, and that's a lot of stress. I lived in what I called the fundraising ghetto, which is I raised all the money and then other people got to spend it. And other people were helping to raise it, but I was certainly the primary person doing that.
Yeah.
And so when I became my own boss, this was one of those questions again, which was, maybe I was traumatized from that experience, but I decided I didn't want to be responsible for somebody else's salary. So that became the scale that worked for me. And of course, your circumstances may be different, which is
absolutely. And some people, they love it. For me, I in the beginning, I was going to start building up more of that grant writing agency. And then I started going, I don't like managing employees, and I don't like that was just part of me too.
Well, you know what? I mean, this sounds harsh, and if those of you who are listening, I apologize. As a one-person business, I am accountable to me, right?
Yep.
I'm not accountable to anybody other than me. I mean, I have customers, I have clients, right? I have to be accountable to them in the sense I'm delivering work or we're doing work together. But I don't have a board of directors. I don't have employees. I got my own thing. And again, for me, that works well. There are people who really want to work in teams all the time and want that feedback and want that camaraderie, and want that accountability. And, I know a number of excellent consulting firms that have 3 or 4 principals who have been part of that firm. And that's their model, is they have a small group of peers who love each other usually and work well together. And that's a nice model too. So, the message here is you have to sort of say, as you're building this, what structure do I want?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you can be intentional about it.
And you can try it out sometimes. And
riffing on something you said earlier, which is the thing about, well, I said yes, I didn't know how to do it. I had to figure out how to do it so I could complete the job. Somebody said to me once, an expert is anyone who knows 5% more than the other guy. And I like that, because it gives us permission to have this much expertise and then jump in.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
If you have
time to focus on it, I think that's the most important bit. Is even if I don't know it, I might go take a course on it or read a book or like dedicate my time that the person
talk to peers, right? Or maybe maybe I pay somebody a few dollars, or they just trade a favor to look over my shoulder while I'm doing the job, and I call them up and say, I'm stuck with this. So this is a good jumping off point. How you're going to build your business, how you're going to make this work, is by having a peer network. And the peer network does 3 or 4 things. Number one, it's a source of jobs and clients. And I am referring work to peers all the time. They are referring work to me. I mean, when I started, I reached out to people that I knew this much and who had established businesses. And I say, I'm starting my business and this is what I do. And I would love it if you send me some referrals or help me think about who I should be talking to. And people are always very gracious about this. And so that peer network generates work. And what a lot of people say is the number one way you market your business is word of mouth. It's people telling other people, right?
Absolutely. It's definitely the strongest.
I think so. The second reason to have a peer network, especially if you're a sole practitioner, is these are your people. If you need advice, if you need solace, if you need help, if you need moral support, right? If you just need somebody to vent with, it's really good to have people that you can email or call or, chat with on social media, or whatever, saying, I'm having this challenge, or I just had an amazing thing happen to me. I wanted to share with somebody. And I think that network is what sustains me. And
I love that.
And a certain amount of your, again, talk about non-billable hours. It's the relationship work you do to build that network.
Absolutely.
But it's huge.
Yeah.
And I
It is.
think, you're going to talk about the conference in a minute, but I think one of the reasons to come to the conference is it's a way to find more peers, right?
Yeah.
You learn from
Absolutely.
experts, you go to the webinars, you pick up cool ideas, all of which is great. But part of it's being in a circle with other people who are doing the same stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
And building friendships and, finding peers. So I think that's huge. It's, as I say, it's the best marketing. The other thing I would say, I don't know if you do this. I have found that, a big chunk of my work is training. I train in person. I do a lot of webinars. I'm doing hybrid now. I've been a trainer for years and years and years. Most of the clientele that wants to work with me one-on-one, they found me at a training. They came to a workshop I did. They liked it. They liked me. They wanted me to come in and work with their organization. So for those of you out in podcast land, for me anyway, is training has been the best marketing.
Yeah.
And even if you're not naturally extroverted, or even if you don't have training skill set yet, I really encourage you to lean into that, because most of the time you get paid to do it. And then the people that are with you physically or online or whatever, and are experiencing you and they like what you're doing, some of them are going to hire you.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
that's a good point, because I used to do that especially a lot, and it was part of my marketing. And what I found was that, because a lot of people would say, why are you going to do a workshop on how to write grants if you actually want to get clients? Because then they're just going to learn how to do it and they won't hire you. I'm like, oh, no. They're going to come because they think they want to write grants, but then when they get into it, they're going to be like, she knows what she's talking about. I'm just going to hire her. That's like where I got so many clients, just like you said, you know what I mean? So like, you don't have to get outside your box or think of something that you don't know how to do just because you want them to come and do your services. No, do what you do, right? Do what you do well, talk about that, train on that, and you will get people coming to you to do that. So if you're doing, okay, we're going to do your board training, and we're going to open this up to the public. So we have a lot of different boards here. Even though you're doing a training, they're going to hire you to do a customizable one, right? I'm sure that's what happened to you.
And that's often true. Like, I'm doing a community board training about, how to teach boards how to raise money. And then they want me to come directly and work with their board, right? Now, this is in part a failure on my part, because I want them to learn enough to go home and do it themselves. That's optimal. We don't always get to optimal. Right. And I'm grateful for the work, but I'm trying to work myself out of a job. I would love to live in a universe where all nonprofits are high functioning and they don't need to hire you or me because they're figuring it out on their own. But, we're trying to create that world. Here's a creepy story, a quick creepy story. I went to a conference once and they were advertising a breakout or, a seminar or whatever at the conference called Increasing Client Dependency. And I thought, yuck.
That is yucky.
It's gross, right?
Codependent clients. Oh my gosh.
Like trying to create a relationship with a hot client where they keep hiring and they can't get rid of you because they need you desperately, right? That is codependence, right? You just named it. That's wrong. My job, and people have to figure this out for themselves. My job is to make myself irrelevant, to engage with a client, help them build their skill set so they don't need me anymore. And so this is abundance mentality. And I think part of what you have to bring to this, and any fundraisers out there understand this, but what you have to bring to this is the idea that there's plenty of work and there are plenty of clients and there's plenty of opportunities. Holly and I are not competing for the same clients. There's so much work. It's a massive industry. There's 1.5 million nonprofit organizations in the United States, right?
And not that many nonprofit consultants.
Well, there's a lot of consultants, but there's more than enough clients for all of us, right?
Exactly.
So, this may be,
like some people only need 3 or 4 clients to make it a full.
Depending on how your business is built, it could be plenty. That is correct, right? So I think it's one of the reasons I'm happy to refer out work and have people refer work to me, et cetera, is that there's just a lot of work out there. And so, you have to find it, you have to hustle,
Yeah.
You have to market yourself intelligently. You have to deliver excellent services. You have to be really good at what you do. But I think, I'm always encouraging for people who want to consider this. And as we
Yeah.
talked about already, you can do it gradually, right? You can put your toes in the water, do a
Mhm.
few jobs, do a few other jobs, see how you like it, see if it leads to other work. If
Mhm.
you like a steady paycheck, maybe this isn't for you.
Yeah.
If you like
Yeah.
someone else to pay for your health care, maybe this isn't for you. Um, but I think if you want the freedom and the adventure and the if you're self-propelled enough to do this, it's totally doable.
Yeah. If you want to really learn about yourself.
It's a good point. It is an
Invest.
education in self. I think that's well
It
said.
is. It is. It's
I know you're on a time limit on these. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, I think I just wanted to kind of touch on, what I really loved on this was when you talked about the networking and peer like referrals, and just to kind of hammer that in a little bit more, because I find that I know we were talking about this in the green room before we started, but like a lot of people that come to me that are starting their business or wanting to grow it, the first thing they kind of think about is, especially those who are starting, I've got to be on LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube, like all of the things.
TikTok,
And
Instagram, Facebook, yeah,
yeah,
all of it. Yeah,
like all of it.
yeah.
And that's where I can get clients, is being online, because there's so many people online. Well, the thing is just like you said, it's those relationships that you build, and it's the people that know you. So one of my coaches, she, said it's the know, like, trust factor. If you have those three things, you can convert, you can get clients, right? If they know you, if they like you, if they trust you. And yes, you can build that online, but it takes time. It takes multiple touches. It takes a lot of investment in marketing. But the easiest way is, hey, if all of a sudden, if Andy, if his sister all of a sudden knew a nonprofit, she's going to recommend Andy, her brother, you know what I mean? And
That's
she
actually a true story.
likes
That has actually happened. Yeah,
it.
but it turns out my sister likes me, so that helps.
Exactly, that helps.
Yeah, but I mean,
Those kind of relationships.
I think what you said is true. And I'll do full disclosure here. I'm full up boomer, right? I'm 66 years old. I am not a digital native. I am engaged with technology only the degree that I have to. I tend to be a late adopter. I mean, that's how I'm wired, right? I'm semi-active in LinkedIn. That's it.
Yeah.
I got a pretty big e-list, right? I've been building that.
Yeah.
And I have other avenues through which I communicate with people, but I don't I find a lot of social media boring. And again, no critique. If it's important to you, it's important to you, and I respect that. Whoever you are out there listening. But as a marketing and client development strategy, what you just said, Hallie, is correct. It is the long way around. You can get
It's
there.
you
You
can
can
get
get there,
there.
but it is the long way around, and you're going to
Yeah.
spend hours and months and years
Yeah.
building those channels before they start yielding work.
Yeah. And if that's what you want to do, like, make space and time for that, but don't neglect the lower hanging fruit, right? Those referrals, like even in our mentorship program and our freelance programs, as soon as we have nonprofit grant writing consultants that come in there, they start referring each other work immediately. They're like, I just got too many clients. Can you take some, or this and
Or
that? If you want to go in on
you're
a
better at
proposal.
this than I am, right? Yeah, I got a call for conflict resolution. I don't really do that well, but I bet you do it well, right? And you just trade off stuff that somebody else can do better than you.
Yeah, you're
Right.
like, hey,
So
you do board
let,
training. I don't. I'm staying in this niche. I'm writing DOE grants. You want to take this client? You know what I mean? Like, it's so nice to have those networking, those partners.
it's mutual, it's lovely, it's beneficial for everybody.
Yeah.
So let me throw out two ideas for finding clients that we don't talk about enough, because they've worked both for me. I am in relationship with many statewide nonprofit associations, and most states across the US, and this is also true in Canada, have nonprofit associations that serve their particular state or province. Many of them put on programs, many of them do seminars, conferences, workshops, all of it. And you can cold call them or cold email them and say, I'm here, this is what I do, these are my credentials. And if you're ever doing conferences or webinars, or you need somebody to present on this subject, I'm available. So that's one. The second avenue that I've used for years, though less likely, is making friends with foundations, because charitable foundations often want their grantees to be better at organizing or board development or program development or evaluation or fundraising or whatever, right? And so for years, again, less true now than it used to be, but I think it's true for a lot of folks, is often it's a third-party funder. Like somebody will write a grant to hire me to come in and do my consulting work with them. And sometimes the referral comes from the foundation. Well, they say, they know the grantee well enough to say, you need help with X, you should go talk to Andy, and we'll pay for it. So making friends in the funding world as a consultant is super helpful, because they can give you not only good referrals, but sometimes they'll actually pay you to do the work. And in many cases, the payment runs through the grantee. The grantee gets the grant in order to hire you to do the work that you're doing with them. So those are two avenues that have been really solid for me in terms of finding work and finding clients.
I love that. And thank you so much for saying that, because that's how I've gotten a lot of my work too, especially the number one. And to even go a little deeper into that kind of merges one and two, is not just nonprofit associations, but chambers of commerce. So
interesting.
Yeah, lots of chambers of commerce, because a lot of their, think about it, a lot of their members also serve on boards. Yeah, so they serve on those funders, or they have those foundations or whatnot. So it kind of crosses the two.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I mean, love that.
There's other, I mean, we have a business network here in Vermont called Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, which is what it sounds like. It's the progressive end of the business world. And probably 25% of their members are nonprofit organizations. And as you have suggested, a number of the for-profit people whose day jobs are working in corporations serve on boards or volunteers with a variety of nonprofits, right? So I have been semi-active in VBSR for years, and occasionally I'll go to the conference or I might present, and that's always been a good network for me. So you want to sort of think upstream, which is, where are the people who need to know me? Where are they gathering? Who do they hang out with?
Exactly. And even going back to your example then of like, this whole thing of social media, right? And that's what I say is like, well, where are the nonprofits who would hire you hanging out? Because if you just want, like, you got to think about that, because all of a sudden, are you just connecting with grant writers out there? Like, that might work for some referrals, but they're not really your target demographic for your services, right? So it's like, also, where are they? Are they making decisions on social media to hire people even? You know what I mean? Like, where are they making those decisions? They're making them more, like where you said, they're going to those workshops. They're actually putting a little money up front to learn something that you're going to do. That's where you're really going to get them to hire you. They're going to go to those conferences. They're going to go, so where are they hanging out and making decisions, right? Not just where they're spending their free time, but where they are trying to market their nonprofit donors, right? But where are they making decisions? So absolutely love that.
I wanna throw out a quote from a friend of mine. I have a colleague named Sharon Bihar who I love, and Sharon says the consultant should never work harder than the client. And I mean, we don't talk. There's a strong tendency to do their work for them. And this may just be because you're one of those people who likes to please people, or it may just be that if the client drops the ball, you're afraid it's going to look bad on you. And you want to protect your brand or your reputation or whatever. I think at the end of the day, our job, as I think for most of us as consultants, not all of us, but I feel like our job is to develop client capacity so they know how to do stuff themselves. And if that's the case, then they have to try stuff. They have to fail. They have to drop the ball sometimes. So that's like part one of this conversation. Part two is, I do a lot of workshops, we get evaluations, and, maybe 20 people are in the workshop, and 19 of them will say, Andy was awesome, that was great. And one of them says, I was really disappointed, right? And there's a tendency for most of us to really fixate on the one person who wasn't happy, as opposed to the 19 people who thought it was awesome. I mean, we tend to absorb criticism differently than we absorb praise. And so the message here is, you can't make everybody happy. And it is entirely possible as a consultant, as a facilitator, as a trainer, that you do your work really well and the client drops the ball.
Yep.
Or you take them as far as you can take them and they're not willing to go any further. That is not on you. That is on them. And we sort of have to understand where our work ends and their work begins. And it's going to be different with every client. It's going to be different with many jobs. But sort of figuring out as part of the contracting and the discovery process at the beginning, this is what I do. This is what y'all do. Here's the line. I'm going to do all my stuff. You're going to do your stuff.
Yeah.
And I think like building in not only your deliverables, but the client deliverables when you're doing contracts, that's super helpful.
Oh my gosh. That's so helpful.
Again, it's not something, there's a tendency to write the bid that says, here's what I'm going to do, right? And here are my deliverables, which is terrific. But then what's the other side of that equation? Like, what do you need from the client to do what you're going to do? And what is expected of the client after your work is done?
That's so good.
And if you can get that in the contract, kaboom, right?
Yeah.
Because then we're doing this mutual thing where you have responsibilities and so do I, and vice versa.
Yeah. And a lot of consultants, especially when they're starting, they don't even think about that. So it's definitely something I promote as well. Like, okay, we need to build expectations on both sides, even from the beginning. Like if you're going to do a discovery call, you need to have questions. It's not just booking your time, right? You need to have questions.
They're not only interviewing you, you're interviewing them, right? Do I want to work with these people? Are they organized? Are they kind? Are they prepared to do the work that we're proposing to do together, right? Do they have the bandwidth, right?
Yeah. And
so
if you have some questions and put some boundaries in place from the beginning, you're going to know that. You're going to show up to those meetings with not just your gut feeling, but data behind you to say, is this going to be a good fit? So you do want to go into that thinking, oh, are they going to hire me? It's not just that. You're thinking, am I going to hire them? So I love
Do I want to work with these people, right?
Yeah.
And you know, that's the other thing that happens if you're in the business for a while. You develop a pretty good BS detector and you can smell clients who are going to be problems pretty far off.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe you're needy enough of the work that you decide you're going to take them on as a difficult client because you need to get paid, and I get that. Yeah. But at some point,
at some point,
you're going to reach the point where you're like, I don't need this anymore, right? I want to work with people who are organized, right? I want to work with the people who follow through. I want to work with people who treat me with respect. I want to work with people who treat themselves with respect. And so, I think that discovery process at the beginning is huge. So thank you for saying that.
And to your point too, it's, you know, you need to know, like, if you don't put those things about what your expectations are of the client, it's on you too. You can't just be like, you know, oh, this client, because you're kind of feeding into it and they don't know how you work or whatever, you know what I mean? So they don't know what those expectations are. So you do need to draw that, you know, kind of like, if you're going to complain, you got to like figure it out, right?
Transparency, man. You just got to be clear about what the expectations are in both directions.
Exactly. Because otherwise you are going to be doing even more of those unbillable hours, or you're going to, you know, all that crazy stuff, you know, just, it's all over the place. And you're going to be like, this is not an ideal client, but what part did you have in making that so? So we do need to take some responsibility and create and learn how to create that. Maybe this is the first time you're hearing of that and you're like, oh, that's what it is. Guys, you need to create some expectations.
I didn't set clear boundaries. That's on me.
Yeah. And that's something you can still do even within a contract, right? So even if you're stuck in that place now where you're like, I have this client, I haven't set clear boundaries, and now I'm doing all of these things and I don't want to do that. You can still set those boundaries. You can, at this point, you know, create some things and say, here, you know, let's like relook at our contract and see who's responsible for what. You can bring that to the table and do that. Yeah.
So this is where you move your head so the crown is directly over your head. Go ahead and do that. Now, I want you to wear, that's perfect. I want you to wear that crown when you're talking to clients on the discovery call, right?
Yep.
Okay.
You gotta wear it.
Look at who you're talking to, people, right? You don't mess with the queen. I got my boundaries. You've got yours, right? Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I gotta say, I mean, this is maybe obvious, but desperation does not work in your personal life, and it doesn't work in your professional life either. And if you'll take anyone who says, yes, I want to work with you, you're going to find yourself in some awkward and difficult and problematic situations. So yeah, I mean, we have to sort of set standards in terms of who we want to work with, and it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah. And I think what helps though with that, what helps people feel like more empowered to do that and get away from the desperation, it goes back to the beginning of our conversation today.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is like setting up your transition into consultancy. And a lot of you might have just been laid off from a job and you're jumping in and you don't have the time to set that up, that transition. That's okay. Like, I hear you and I get that. But if you do have the ability to transition and put some monies aside for saving, to really understand how to build a business, it's going to be a little bit easier. And not everybody has that benefit, I will say that. But if you do, you know, those are some things definitely to think about that will help you not from feeling so desperate, right? Not being, but feeling so desperate. So yeah,
Good.
that can be helpful.
That's right.
But yeah, this has been awesome, Andy. This is such a great, great conversation. I know I've gotten a lot out of it. It's been so fun to talk to you, and just bringing in all of this again, like billable hours, how to network, how to get your first client, setting up models. Like, I know so many people are going to get so much out of this. So where people want to know more about you, want to get on that email list that you have and hear more about what you have going on, where can people find you?
Yeah, I have two websites, and if you do show notes, you can put them in there. It's andyrobinsononline.com, which is one of my websites. And then I did a book many years ago that you mentioned called Train Your Board and Everyone Else to Raise Money. And that became a website, which became a blog, which became a training series and a video series. And if you go to trainyourboard.com, you'll find a lot of stuff there, including some free training exercises that people use to train each other how to raise money. So those are the two best places to find me, and there's contact info on both of them. And you know, I'm the author as noted of many books, and people are free to look for my books and purchase them if they're of value. So thank you for having me, Holly.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on. We'll definitely have to have you back on. And it was just great seeing you. It's been almost a year now, so it's been great seeing you again. And I'm sure we'll see you again in the future. So thank you for your time and sharing all your wisdom. And
welcome.
Also,
and
congratulations on your retirement. You're going into semi-retirement, so I'm loving this.
Yeah, well, if you want to have me back at some point, we'll see if you reach that stage in your life. But yeah, I'm navigating retirement in little stages. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. So that's been
kind
interesting.
Like your 2-year program.
Sort of, kind of. Yeah, it's not different. And I'll put in a plug for the conference. I got to work the conference last year. With Holly and Mandy and their colleague Mazarine, and it was lovely. It was provocative, interesting, creative. I've heard from a lot of people who showed up who were like, that blew my mind. So I'm excited you're doing it again, and I encourage people to take a look and perhaps sign up and join you.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back at the conference as well sometime. So I know it's just been such a great thing that we've been doing, and thank you for being a part of that, and thank you for talking about it. So yeah,
thank you for inviting me. Pleasure talking with you. Be well.
Thank you. You too.